P-Square became the standard because they offered audiences more than one reason to care. Peter brought choreography, physical performance, club energy, and a visual instinct that made even the familiar pop ideas feel larger on screen. Paul brought melody, vocal emotion, and many of the love songs that became central to the group's identity. Jude helped manage the operation and develop many of the concepts surrounding their visual presentation. Their concerts combine live singing, instrumental performance, and disciplined choreography. Artists including Davido, Wizkid, and Rema will later identify P-Square as an influence, yet the same structure that made P-Square powerful also contained a future conflict. The question arises, who deserved the greatest recognition for the group's success? When the brothers were winning, the public really needed to ask that question. As trust weakened, it became impossible to avoid. Peter will later claim that he wrote or produced approximately 99% of P-Square's songs, an assertion that immediately intensified the disagreement over individual contribution. Rumors that P-Square was preparing to separate became louder in 2016. Peter had begun using the name Mr. P, although his personal manager initially denied that the change represented the end of P-Square. The group's publicist, Bayo Adetu, also said there had been no official statement confirming a breakup. In September 2016, Peter and Paul released Bank Alert. 1 year.
You again!
A song whose title now carries an unintended irony as we begin to look into the financial disagreements that will later dominate the family's public conflicts. At the time, the release reassured fans that the brothers had survived another period of tension. They followed it with Away in February 2017. 7 months later, the group cancelled its planned tour of the United States and Canada as report of a renewed conflict spread. This time, the disagreement was not resolved privately. Peter wrote to the group's lawyer and formally expressed his desire to end his relationship with the P-Square brand. According to the historical reports, part of the conflict involved disagreements over how songs were selected for P-Square albums. Peter believed Paul's songs received a disproportionately large share of the available spaces, while his own creative contributions were not being recognized fairly. At one stage, Peter reportedly refused to participate in anything connected to P-Square for several weeks. He later moved out of his home he shared with Paul, taking his wife and children with him. Now, because the twins had spent years acquiring property and building businesses together, lawyers had to be involved in separating their finances, assets, and joint ventures. Jude, the elder brother who had managed the group and helped shape many of its visual ideas, was at the center of the family conflict. The same creative differences that had produced variety inside P-Square were now being presented as evidence that the brothers could no longer work together. The same family structure that allowed them to build an unusually coordinated operation had become the source of conflict, destroying it. Peter continued as Mr. P, while Paul became Rudeboy. Both brothers built viable solo careers. Mr. P released songs like Ebeano, Look Into My Eyes, Just Like That, and One More Night. He also explored acting, appearing in Genevieve's Inanji's Lionheart and later in the popular Netflix series Shantytown. Rudeboy concentrated primarily on music, releasing songs including Reason With Me, Woman, Together, Ayoyo, Double Double, and Audio Money. In 2021, both brothers released their debut solo albums. Mr. P released The Prodigal, while Rudeboy released Rudy Kill Us. Their solo careers proved that each brother could attract listeners without the P-Square name, but they also confirmed what the group had spent years transforming into a strength. Peter and Paul were different artists. For 4 years, fans continued to hope that the family might eventually repair itself. Then in November 2021, a video appeared that seemed to show that the impossible had happened. On 17th of November 2021, Peter and Paul publicly reconciled. A video showed the twins hugging and shaking hands at Peter's home in Lagos. Peter's wife was present and Jude also embraced them. The reconciliation came one day before Peter and Paul's birthday and appeared to end a feud that had lasted for approximately 4 years. People were not simply watching two entertainers reunite, they were watching identical twins who had spent most of their lives together appear to restore a broken family relationship. Social media was filled with celebration and the public quickly interpreted the embrace as the return of P-Square. Peter later claimed that this interpretation was not what he had intended. According to his account, he had been returning to Lagos from Atlanta after a 3-month tour of Canada and the United States. About 35 minutes before the plane landed, his caretaker sent him a message saying Paul had gone to Peter's home and apologized to Peter's wife, Lola. Peter said Lola later told him that Paul had arrived unexpectedly at about 4 o'clock in the morning. The people inside the house were reportedly frightened because they did not understand his intentions, and some began recording the encounter. According to Peter, Paul knelt, held Lola's legs, and repeatedly said, "I am tired," without offering a detailed explanation. Members of Peter's and Paul's teams then encouraged Peter to visit his twin brother, arguing that Paul had already made the first move towards reconciliation. Peter agreed. The widely shared video of Peter walking towards Paul while holding a drink came from that encounter. However, Peter insisted that he had only agreed to restore the relationship between them as brothers. "I never wanted P-Square," he said in the accounts in the consolidated report. "I only wanted us to come back as brothers." Peter said Jude arrived during the gathering and that it was the first time he had seen him in approximately 5.5 years. The following day, Peter released the music video for his solo song "I Love You" featuring Tenny, Simi, and Tama Braxton. According to Peter, Paul questioned why he had released a solo project if P-Square had returned.
Let it marinate.
Peter said he explained that he wanted them to support each other as brothers while continuing their separate careers with the possibility of reconsidering the group at a later time. He would later describe the public understanding of the moment with the phrase, "The reunion was fake." Peter did not mean that the reconciliation itself had never happened. His point was that the event had been presented to the public as an official return of P-Square before he believed such an agreement existed. Eventually, Peter and Paul did restore the group.
P-Square. Okay. Yeah.
They released Jaye, also known as Hiye Game, and Find Somebody. They announced a 100-city world tour and returned to major international stages, including London's Royal Albert Hall. In 2023, they spoke publicly about preparing another P-Square album and received a Kora Legend honor, recognizing their contribution to African music. For a brief period, the story appeared to have found the conclusion millions of fans wanted. The brothers had returned, the songs were being performed again, and the legacy seemed secure. But rebuilding the performance was easier than rebuilding trust. After Peter and Paul reconciled in 2021, they attempted to rebuild P-Square as both a musical group and a business. a new company named Square Root Entertainment was established, with Peter and Paul agreeing to share decision-making and revenue equally. However, disagreements over management, company control, and past financial records soon created fresh tension. The controversy became more serious when potential investors expressed interest in buying or licensing the P-Square music catalog. Considering the group's enormous success, the international tours, and popular songs, the catalog was expected to be highly valuable. But after prospective buyers examined the available revenue records, the offers reportedly dropped significantly. This raised a major question. Was the P-Square catalog earning far less than expected, or was some of its income being collected through accounts the brothers did not fully understand? The search for answers revealed several companies with confusingly similar names. There was Northside Entertainment, which was understood to be connected to Peter, Paul, and their elder brother and former manager Jude. There was also Northside Inc., which appeared in some album credits. There was also Northside Music, an entity allegedly receiving royalty payments connected to P-Square. The central concern was that the money linked to the group may have been paid into Northside Music without clear proof that all the relevant parties had approved of the arrangement. Records covering the period between 2017 and 2023 allegedly showed that more than $1 million in royalty payments had passed through the Northside Music account. The fact that the records reportedly began in January 2017 was especially important because this was several months before P-Square publicly separated. The controversy therefore became less about a single payment and more about who controlled the group's catalog, who collected its royalties, and whether every member of the group had access to the complete financial records. Several specific transactions also became disputed. In one case, money from a digital royalty payment was transferred to Paul and Jude. This was presented as possible evidence that Peter had been excluded from part of the payment. However, the opposing explanation was that Peter's share had already been sent directly to his personal account, while only the remaining money belonging to Paul and Jude entered the company accounts. Emails and payment records were reportedly presented to support that explanation. Another disagreement concerned access to the company's bank account. Peter's position was that he struggled to obtain the records needed to understand where P-Square's money was going. Jude's defense was that bank documents listed Peter, Paul, and Jude as authorized signatories, meaning Peter was not completely excluded from the company's financial operations. There was also a dispute over how long it took to provide access to the catalog's financial back-end. One account described a delay of approximately 3.5 months. The opposing account relied on emails showing that the distributor supplied the relevant reports and login details within 6 days. Even the small royalty payment received after the catalog changed distributors became part of the argument. One side viewed the low payment as evidence that P-Square's revenue might have been diverted or collected elsewhere. The other side maintained that the payments were properly recorded, divided equally, and did not prove that any money had been hidden. This is why the controversy remains difficult to resolve publicly. It is not simply a disagreement about whether money entered an account. It is a dispute over which company had the legal authority to collect the money, who had access to the account, whether the payments were properly divided, and whether the documents released publicly showed the complete story. Peter believed the financial structure surrounding P-Square lacked transparency and that important payments were made without his full knowledge or authorization. Jude maintains that the transactions were legitimate, that Peter had access to the account, and that selected documents were presented without the records needed to explain them properly. Paul remains caught in the middle because several of the disputed payments and company arrangements also involved him. Without the complete bank statement, contract, emails, distributor records, company ownership documents, EFCC findings, and court filings, the public cannot conclusively determine which account is correct. What is clear is that the conflict has moved far beyond the original breakup of P-Square. It is now a battle over money, ownership, trust, and control of one of the most valuable music catalogs in African entertainment. And now that the disagreement appears to have grown even deeper, one question remains. Will Peter and Paul ever overcome the business dispute and give fans another P-Square comeback, or have we already seen them perform together for the final time? By the time the conflict consumed the family, P-Square no longer needed to prove their place in African music. Their songs had already become part of people's weddings, childhood, friendships, heartbreaks, and celebrations. Peter and Paul Okoye rose from boys imitating Michael Jackson in Jos to becoming one of Africa's biggest music acts, who helped open international doors before Afrobeat became the global industry it is today. That is what makes the fallout bigger than money, royalties, or ownership. It is the story of two brothers who built something extraordinary together, only to reach a point where they could no longer agree on who created what, who controlled what, or who could still be trusted. Yet the controversy produced an unexpected twist. As Nigerians rallied around Peter Okoye, Mr. P, the attention followed him beyond the dispute. His YouTube channel reportedly climbed from about 500,000 subscribers to 1 million, while his Spotify monthly listeners rose to about 549,500 and has continued growing. Even the Zip Republic cap he wore during his appearances became part of the moment, with the brand reportedly selling out about 3,000 caps. It is a striking reminder of how deeply Nigerians are still invested in the P-Square story. After years of separation, accusation, and unresolved wounds, the public is simply not watching Peter and Paul fight. People were returning to the music, choosing sides, revisiting memories, and in Peter's case, turning sympathy and attention into renewed momentum. Perhaps that is the final irony of P-Square. The brothers once conquered Africa because they moved as one. Now, even as they move further apart, the world is still watching because of what they once built together. The music, the fame, and the memories still stayed the same. What we aren't sure of is their brotherhood. Will it ever be the same way it used to be? The allegations and counterclaims presented in this documentary remain disputed. The supplied reports do not include all underlying bank statements, emails, contracts, court filings, distributor records, or official EFCC findings required to determine conclusively which account is correct.